Do you know how I feel when the Humble Monthly keeps cramming bundles full of survival sandboxes? Apparently they do, because they've succinctly captured all of the emotions of betrayal, anger, and frustration in our next title, because in today's humble opinion, we're in for a world of hurt in Hurtworld. As you might have guessed, Hurtworld is another motherfucking goddamn piece of shit, survival sandbox game developed and published by Bankroll Studios. Aptly named, since they make games that make me want to coat the entire lower half of my body in a dense layer of concrete and roll my heavy ass off the bank and into a lake where the screams of my irritation can be safely released without destroying all life within a 30-mile radius. Suicidal digressions aside, this game is yet again fundamentally the exact same as every other survival sandbox on the market. You spawn in a player-populated map with nothing but your name to your name. And the first revolutionary gameplay mechanic that you might notice is that you don't punch trees. Oddly enough, despite the inclusion of combat, you can't punch at all, much less trees, so you'll be collecting your logs and stones off the ground at first. However, once you've gathered enough, you can cobble a crude stone pick and a cruder flint axe, and with that axe you'll finally be able to chop up all of those dead logs you see lying around. What? The trees? No. No, you don't chop those. Everyone knows that dead, hollowed out logs that are essentially what amounts to husks of tree bark provide much more log-like wood that's sturdier for crafting than, you know, fucking trees. Also, for every one source of logs in the form of a dead tree, there are 60 bajillion common sources of surface rocks and minerals to break with a pick, which makes that one infinitely more useful. You'll probably want to upgrade your tools by crafting, which is actually handled pretty well in this game. It has just enough of a progression curve to make you feel like you're moving forward as you collect and work with different materials, but while it's diverse and interesting, it's more convoluted than the fucking Humble Bundle team is dedicated to stuffing my Steam library full of survival sandboxes. While I appreciate them breaking down what I can craft into categories, rather than having two separate scroll wheels worth of text, maybe have a window somewhere with pictures of the items within the categories visually sorted by similar items that I can hover over for tooltips. As it stands, in order to see what items look like and do, I have to click on them individually, then go up to the picture in the actual crafting window and hover over it. It's hard to compare things that way. Then, when you're finally ready to craft, it doesn't automatically draft items from your inventory when you're using the workbench. Never fucking mind that it does when you're handcrafting something. Fuck consistency, I guess. And once your item's successfully crafted, it doesn't automatically go back into your inventory either. Fuck me. The good news is that whenever I ran into something that was particularly confusing, the text chat was more than happy to help me out. Like when I needed to know how to smelt iron because my fire wasn't hot enough and there was no indication that using different fuels burned hotter. The bad news is that unlike text chat, people are much less helpful when you actually meet them. Unless you need help figuring out what it feels like to have a spear sticking out of your fucking face. Just kidding, they weren't much help there either. Fucking bozo. Normally, Hurtworld can be found on the Steam store for the price of $24.99, which really helps me understand the name Bankroll, because holy shit is that steep. That's more expensive than all but one of the survival sandboxes we've gotten in the past, and I'd say that $15 is more in line with what I'd be willing to pay. But unfortunately, you'll only see it that low when it goes on sale for its lowest price of $14.99, so definitely wait for that one. Gameplay for Hurtworld earns a 7 out of 10. It's easier to get into the game than most survival sandboxes thanks to its tiered crafting system that makes progression feel easy. It also maintains momentum by allowing you to keep tools and important items on death unless you've been killing a lot of people, in which case you lose an increasing number of items. Both of these mechanics serve to discourage killing new players or spawn camping while also adding the risk and reward system to PvP. They also manage to instigate controlled PvP with events like meteor drops and orbs, which grants rare items and materials in limited amounts. Speaking of materials, it loses points for having some materials like amber be absolutely necessary for crafting even the earliest of items, but only appearing randomly. The fact that things like this are obtained so unreliably make the game feel even grindier than usual. On top of that, it also suffers from the same issue of having a high initial investment in order to get to the meat of the game. I've heard but not seen that building mechanics are excellent and enjoyable, and I've heard but not seen that there are cars. But luckily, I've also not experienced any of the negatives due to my low playtime, like the apparent rampant hacking or how vulnerable bases are when users are offline. But it is worth noting that there is an anti-cheat system. I'm just not sure how well that works because I've not been around long enough. One negative that I've experienced is how fucking difficult it is to get the game running. I got these issues a lot when I was trying to start up, and I don't really understand what they were, but I finally seem to have got it sorted out after a good hour. Value earns a 3 out of 10 mostly because it is, for the 1,000,000th time, another survival sandbox that I'm getting sick of seeing. Rust, Ark Survival Evolved, Grav, The Forest, and now Hurtworld, it's getting a bit ridiculous. Sure, other game genres have been repeated like point-and-click adventures or roguelites, but think of it this way. If they had made a bundle strictly around a genre as the theme and sold it as a typical Humble Bundle, which repeated genre would have the most diversity diversity. It wouldn't be this one because it's too repetitive and I'm tired of getting them. I'm tired of reviewing them. It's all just reporting the minor differences and that's soul draining. Enough is enough. I don't care about finding the survival sandbox that fits my specific needs enough to classify it as a good game. You're not going to get me the one. As a consumer, I just want variety and new experiences. With a composite score of 5, Hurtworld earns a C. It's a halfway decent game bogged down by other games just like it. It's good enough on its own, but in a bundle that's bought blindly, it's a disappointment.